Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery podcast are proud to bring you Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. Join your hosts as they address the real issues of first responders' health and wellness, from physical and mental health to relationships and work-life balance. Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, as well as iHeartRadio, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery answering the call.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. I am Mike Miles, the Podfather, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about PTS, post-traumatic stress. They used to call it PTSD, and in the DSM-5, they get rid of the D. They get rid of the disorder. Basically, what they're saying is post-traumatic stress is a reaction that can stay with you for a long time as a result of something you may have participated in, a death, horrific death, a car accident, fire. And if you're an EMS worker, policeman, fireman, correctional officer, EMS, first responders in any way, shape, or form, or a veteran, you might have seen some horrific occurrences over your career. I was fortunate. I lasted 35 years as a Lowell, Massachusetts police officer, 28 early nights, 4 to 12 in a cruiser, and 7 as the employee assistance professional in my office out in Chelmsford. And what I did was I helped cops and their families from all cities and towns, not just Lowell. Because 10 years ago, there weren't really many departments that had their own employee assistant professional. They would use mental health providers from insurance companies. And if you're a police officer or a fireman or a correctional officer or an EMS worker, and you have some issues of your own, or your family does, you might not want to go speak to a stranger, or you might say, hey, I'd rather speak to a professional who doesn't have any knowledge of who I am or who my family is. But I think being a cop, a street cop, and having an education in therapy, having a master's in social work, and licensed to be an alcohol drug counselor in 2 states, Mass and New Hampshire, because it's so close. I'd much rather go see somebody like that. My guy is Jeff Zeisel. Jeff Zeisel is a therapist from Woburn, Massachusetts. Well, that's where his office is. He actually lives in Boston. And great guy, good friend, good therapist. He works with the DEA, and he works with several local police departments, including Lowell. Actually, he replaced me when I left. I was there 3 years after I retired. I stayed on another 3 years as the EAP. New chief came in. We don't get along. Politics. See you later. And it's fine with me. I'm a busy guy. I stay busy. I think when you're in the law enforcement, there's a lot of politics, that go on. From the city manager, your mayor, who was ever in charge of your city and town, goes directly to the chief. Usually chiefs are chosen for a variety of reasons. First of all, they have to know what they're doing. And they also have to be somewhat politically correct, connected, and they have to be able to, excuse me, get along with everybody. So it's a tough job. I've never been a chief. I've known some chiefs. There's no doubt in my mind, I could have done that job. I've never taken a promotional exam. I get along with people well. I'm knowledgeable, but some people are made to do that job and some aren't. But irregardless, the EAP position is a position I think you're going to see more and more in law enforcement. Getting back to post-traumatic stress disorder, I feel it's important to talk about it for several reasons. I know when I first became a police officer in 1980, when I was in the academy, an agent from the FBI came and he spoke about stress in law enforcement. And you know what? It was a 4-hour block. I still have the binder, some of the notes he passed out, the handouts he had. And I really give that era a lot of credit for seeing the future. And I feel like as a result of what's going on now in society, they want to put social workers with police officers to go on certain calls that somebody might have a mental health issue. They might have, be suicidal. They might be homicidal. Whatever the reason, there's definitely a mental health block there. And they want to make sure that these people get the right treatment. Well, most cops are trained nowadays to observe, and we have a lot of resources at our fingertips. We can call, we can contact anyone via the communications room. And if you need to take somebody in section, we call it section 35, and put them in a facility for a mental health evaluation for their own safety or safety of other people, you can do that without much fanfare. But I can see going forward, they're talking about, when I say they, I mean society, politicians, mostly the Democrats, are talking about having social workers somehow involved with some police calls. And I think it's got some good points, and it's got some points that I think are very detrimental to law enforcement. You got to watch out for your own safety, number one. And when you have to keep an eye on somebody else that hasn't been trained in emergency situations that could be dangerous, could be life or death, I think it takes the onus off of your command presence at the scene. As a police officer, now you're worrying about A or B, a man or a woman, it doesn't matter, a social worker that's there to help, and they're there justifiably, and obviously they want to help and they're trained. But some situations are very dangerous, very, very dangerous. Not all of them, but some. Getting back to post-traumatic stress, I think it's, I equate it to a smell or an odor, all right? If something smells really bad, if someone's burning tires, you can smell that thick, rubbery, toxic smell. It's very distinct, and if you smell burning tires, you wouldn't forget it. It's like smelling a dead body. I mean, you're not going to forget that odor. It stays with you. But you don't want to smell something that's offensive, but we breathe. You know what? We have to breathe, and when we breathe, we get an odor that's offensive or dangerous. We have no say in the matter. If we're in the proximity of a burning tire, I'm using that as an example. Well, I feel like post-traumatic stress is very similar to that. We have no say in it. Whether you think you're going to be affected by, I'll just give you an example. A man sitting on a toilet in the middle of August died on the toilet, probably 7 or 8 days he's been there. He's a pile of flesh, bones, maggots, and he's he's excreted so much liquid that he's seeping through the bathroom floor down to the next bathroom below, the next apartment below them. There's a stain and there's fluid dripping down. And that was a smell I'll never forget. But even if you took away the smell, just the sight of that is something that popped in my head and stayed there. Did it make me want to go home and cry and bury my head in the pillow and say, I can't do this job? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I'm just using that as an example. Something, you know what? I didn't have a cell phone with a camera. Maybe I would have taken a picture of that back nowadays. I don't know. Not to show everyone, just for my report or whatever. I don't think the average person working 40 hours a week, is required to see something like that. But unfortunately, as a police officer or a fireman or an EMS worker, you are, so that that incident has been etched in my mind for over 40 years, for 1981, I observed this. It didn't affect me. It didn't keep me up at night. It was just something that was there. Well, I'll give you another example of a young couple, 17 and 16, and they had a pact that they decided to commit suicide. I don't know what the reason was. I think it had to do with their families not wanting them to date one another. And the reason was the boy's father had committed suicide via carbon monoxide, put a hose in his exhaust pipe, ran it through the window of his car and fell asleep, went to sleep and died. Well, this is what this couple had done together. So this boy, who was 17 or 18, had known about his father's suicide. He never met his father. His father did this when he was still in the womb. His mother was pregnant with him. But is it hereditary? I don't know. But I do know that if a family member does commit suicide and you're aware of it, your chances of committing suicide increase considerably. And I think the experts say 30%. So I just remember a warm summer night and just checking this Lover's Lane, still sunny out. It was 6:00 and a beautiful July night. And saw a green Maverick, driver's door open, 2-door car, front seat. The back part of the front seat was forward. There was a couple in the back seat. The girl was behind the driver's side. The boy was behind the passenger side. He was leaning on his right shoulder, and they were both dead. She appeared to have moved the seat forward, opened the door to try to get out, but she was overcome by the fumes, and she never made it. And they were a very young, handsome couple. And this was just wasn't a call. We were just driving down this Lover's Lane, just checking people that were parked there to make sure everybody was copacetic. Everybody was there on their own will. And, that's what we did. So we come across this double suicide. Now that has bothered me. That has stayed in my mind. That has made me think when my children were younger and they were having issues with their boyfriend and girlfriend, of course, that popped back up. I can tell you the night, the fragrances of the cologne the girl had on, or the perfume, what she had on for clothes, what he had on, what they were eating. They had a bag of Doritos and a can of Coke. Everything about that car, I could describe it vividly because that was etched in my mind that particular night, and it has never left. Again, did it cause me stress where I didn't go to work and I couldn't perform? Absolutely not. Back in the day, I worked 4 to 12 for 28 years. And for the first 4 or 5 years, when we got out of work, we used to go and drink. 12:30 at night, we'd all meet and we'd drink till 3 or 4 in the morning. Sometimes we'd drink in a parking lot across from the police station. There was a medical center. There was no one out this time of night. We'd go behind the center. There was nobody. It was an urban neighborhood. All the businesses were closed. There was a high school across the way. There was a canal in the high school. But we'd drink there all night till 4 or 5 in the morning. And then we'd go home and get a shut eye and get up. And sometimes you'd go home, get up at 7, go do a detail. But drinking, definitely, we called it choir practice. We got that from Joseph Wambaugh, who was a great author from the LAPD. He's written numerous books that have been movies, The Onion Field, The New Centurions, The Glitter Dome, just many, many books. He was an LA cop who became a great novelist and great writer. I mean, very, very good writer. There's been a few cops that have turned novelists. He's one of them, Joseph Wambaugh. I don't believe he's still alive. There was another one. He was a New York captain. No, I'm sorry. He was a New York detective. And I can't think of his name. He's another great writer, though. Just can't think of his name. It'll come to me. I was on a talk show with him once. He was a good writer, too. And he actually had a daughter who was a lieutenant on the New York PD when I met him. Kunitz was his last name. Kunitz. Anyway, getting back to post-traumatic stress. It's something that's going to be there whether you want it or not. It's going to happen. It's going to be embedded in your mind, and it's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. Good or bad, doesn't matter. You know, I don't care how much you work out, how healthy you are, how much you pray. It doesn't matter. It's just there are certain incidents that are going to be embedded in your psyche and stay with you the rest of your career. Few people, believe it or not, few people make it from the start of their police career to the end. You know, when you first become a cop, you think, I'm going to retire when I'm 55. I'll have 35 years on or whatever, and I'll be old enough. I'll have the right numbers to get my pension, 80% of what I make in a weekly pay. I'll get that as a pension. Sounds good, and it is good. 10 years after you retired and people are getting raises, you're still getting that pension. So I don't know. I don't think it's that good. The other side of it is most cops don't live 10 years after they retire. Most cops are dead. White cops are dead. Black cops, male, female, doesn't matter. Usually they die before they're 60. I know it's a horrible thing to say, but it's a fact. It's not my stats. Department of Justice do all these surveys. They do all these rituals where they go out and they speak and they get all kinds of documentation. And you know, a lot of cops take their own lives, so that adds to the equation of the age. But the average white male might live to be about 80. The average white cop might live to be about 60, and that's horrible. You know, and again, doesn't matter what you think or what you want or what you're doing. You know, these are stats that are factual. And there's a lot of healthy cops. I knew a cop that ran 18 marathons. He was dead when he was 52. All right. You know, and you know, in your own departments, you know people. So if you think you're going to come on and do this job for 35 years and get out and grab a pension, well, that's the goal. But in the meantime, you got to take care of yourself. I think it's really good to have a debriefing of a diffusing after a critical incident. Bad fire, 5 people died. First one on the scene, brand new cop. Going through a divorce. Wife's cheating on him. He's got a couple of kids, great father, great husband. You know what? Whatever her reasons were, they were, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. But my heart went out to this officer. And he moved on, got his life in order. Still a cop, does a great job. But he went to a bad fire. First 6 months on the job, 5 people died. He was involved in a shooting. Within 1 year, this cop did more in 1 year. He was involved in more critical incidents than most cops are in their whole career. Plus, he was going through a divorce that he didn't want. So just imagine where his head was at. And I know when I'd call him to check on him or text him, sometimes he wouldn't get back to me and there'd be one-word answers. And I felt like I was bothering him, so I stopped. But I did tell him, you know, I'm not going to keep texting and bothering. If you need me, I'm here. Well, he never contacted me again. I didn't take it personal. I hope he found somebody that could help him. I suggested that. if he wasn't going to see me, he should see someone. I'm hoping he did. There's no doubt in my mind that that fire, he had a lot of other things going on, but he pulled up to a fire where 5 people died, 3 of them were children, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. That had to be something that just stayed with him. And on top of everything else that was going on, he was involved in the shooting. He was shot at 2 weeks either before or after that fire. It all happened simultaneously within 7 or 8 months, everything that I just went over. But my point is the post-traumatic stress that this officer would absorb as a result of everything going on in his life. I've always wanted to get in touch with him and ask him, how'd you get through this? Tell me your secret. What did you do? Because as far as I know, he didn't turn to alcohol or drugs. He didn't turn to promiscuity, gambling. No, he just got through it, and maybe a lot of people can on their own. We all have, incidents, our lives. We try to have a good life, but nothing's perfect. There's always going to be death. There's always going to be, disappointments. You can't prevent that. We don't like it, but that's just part of life. And when you are an EMS worker, a cop fireman, going on these calls and going to these horrific scenes on top of your life events that are going on, you got to absorb these too. So there's no wonder that police and firemen die at a young age, usually from heart problems, because the adrenaline goes into the arteries, then it subsides and it goes back into the arteries the next day, a couple hours later, then it subsides. A lot of blockages. These obviously layman's terms, but this is what happens. And Dr. Henry Abraham was the head of psychiatry at Beth Israel Hospital in Boston. And he was a guy with a ton of knowledge, and he could explain stress better than I ever will be able to. Dr. James Reese from the FBI, just another guy. You can read his writings. Policing a Violent Society by Dr. James Reese. Dr. Reese has passed away. Great guy. He was one of the original profilers for the FBI, looking for mass murderers and bad people. But he always felt that cops were getting a bad rap, not getting enough attention. So he started working with people like myself and my partner at the time, Tom Fleming. In 1987, we had our first seminar. New Attitudes was the name of our organization. And we had a seminar just for law enforcement about stress. And Dr. Reese was the keynote speaker. And there's about 135 police officers and their family members there. And my friend Tom Fleming put that together, Sergeant Fleming, and it was a huge hit. So much so that World News Tonight with Peter Jennings found out about it. They came and they videoed our next seminar. And, it was a new topic in the 80s, cops talking about addiction and, abuse of alcohol and drugs, promiscuity, gambling, and all that. Openly talking about it openly and blaming the job for a lot of it, not blaming, but, attributing a lot of that behavior to the job. And most people will agree. Now, today's society, there's a lot of people that just don't like police officers because the media shows them over and over and over and over again something very negative. George Floyd being murdered by a police officer, nailing on his neck. I'm sure that didn't help the man at all, but I think he had underlying issues as well. Irregardless, that cop was charged justifiably, found guilty, and I have no empathy or no sympathy for him. I've never seen anything like that. Never. If I had been there, I would have pulled him off after he was handcuffed. Once somebody's handcuffed, that's it. They're done. They can say anything they want, but they're handcuffed behind their backs. What are they going to do to you? They're sitting on their ass. There's very little they can do to you. So anyway, I just think the media plays a big part in all the stress that we encounter. They can make us heroes. we save a drowning child, run into a burning building. They can make us heroes, and that looks good in print. But let me tell you, they only write that article once. Okay? You make a mistake, they're going to write a ton of articles, and they're not going to let up. There's a state trooper from Massachusetts who's in a New Hampshire jail on a domestic charge. He's been there over 9 months, lost his job, lost his family, and he cannot leave this jail. This judge will not let him out. He put his hands on a woman. He beat her, and does he belong there? I think he should have an opportunity to get out and defend himself. If he was anything other than a state trooper, I think he would have been out. And I think it's overkill. It's my opinion, just my opinion. I don't know all the facts of the case, but I do know the media has written over 17 articles. This is a major newspaper, the Boston Herald, the Boston Globe, major newspapers. There's been 17 articles on this guy. He's been on the radio. Well, he hasn't, but this incident. And, he's like public enemy number one. What he did is wrong, 100%. But let's treat everybody fair and equitable. We're talking about fair and equitable treatment of minority people, Asians, Blacks, Latinos, Southeast Asian. Let's be fair and equitable to everybody, especially with law enforcement, but you're not going to find that. We're supposed to be held to a higher standard. And I can understand some of that, but on the other side of it, it only seems to work the way the media wants it to work, because they can crucify you, they can ruin you. Post-traumatic stress is something, if you're not sleeping, if your behavior is changing, if you lack your energy, you're not eating properly, you're overeating, you're undereating, you're drinking too much, maybe you're doing other drugs, painkillers, you really have to take a look at yourself and decide, do I have a problem or not? The first 5 years of most cops' careers, it's like a honeymoon. You love it. You took the job because you wanted to do it and you like it. But after a while, the shine goes away. And I know I've talked to cops that have been on 3 years, and all of a sudden, this job just doesn't seem to have the same glit that it did when they first come on. Years ago, it was 5 years. But I think the last couple of years, it's been really tough being a police officer and a fireman as well, and a correctional officer. I see correctional officers in my private practice. They don't have it easy either. They're behind a wall. People don't really see what goes on. But let me tell you, in Massachusetts, it's not easy being a correctional officer. Everything's videoed now, which is good. I think it's good in the sense that, if you act up, if you do something that's not right, someone's gonna have a video. So that will keep most people on the straight and narrow. I think a lot of cops that wear body cameras, they're less apt to lose their temper or act in a way that would be detrimental to, their careers and to society in general. We're here to protect and serve people. That's what we're supposed to do. But it doesn't mean we should be spit on, ridiculed, and painted with one big broad brush because one cop did a horrific thing. But the media wants you to think most cops are like that. You got to be afraid of the cops. Be afraid, especially if you're a minority. Let me tell you, 35 years, Lowell, Massachusetts, I never saw one act of racism. Never. Not once did I ever see a cop act in a way that I would call racist. Did I hear cops say the N-word? Of course. Have I said it? Absolutely. Is that racism? I don't think so. You know what? I feel that we're in a time period now where statistics speak for themselves. Numbers don't lie. People just don't want this job anymore. But if you have this job and your heart's still in it, and you want to, make it to those years when you can retire and maybe do something else, get out after 20, 25 years, goes by fast as you see it. But I can tell you this, after you've been on about 10 years, try to enhance your education. Think about doing something else. Maybe you go back to school, get a master's degree. Maybe you might want to be a teacher. You might want to do something other than this job, because after 20 years, you've seen it all, you've done it all. You might want to finish your career. Maybe you did well on some of these tests and you want to finish your career as a captain or a lieutenant or a sergeant or a chief or a deputy. Wonderful. But irregardless, post-traumatic stress is an enemy. It definitely is going to cling to you, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, it will. And some of the symptoms, I just spoke of them earlier, they're very sneaky. I know since I've been retired, I've been retired 6 years. It's been a blessing. It really has. I'm closer to my own higher power, my God, as I understand. I'm a lot quieter. I read a lot more. I'm in the process of putting a book together that I started working on in the 90s. And I find time now. I can take an hour and a half, 2 hours, a couple times a week. It's a lot of work. I didn't realize how much work this would be. But I'm hoping to make it till I'm 80. That's the goal. And I'm here. I'm available. I have my own therapy business called Therapy Services, 978-459-4884. That's my office number, 978-459-4884. And my cell phone is 978-746-1717. And my email is Mike Miles, M as in Mary, S as in Sam, W as in whiskey, MSW @gmail.com. Mike Miles, MSW @gmail.com. Feel free to call me at my office, call me on my phone, or send me an email. I'm here. A little tired tonight. Start my vacation, heading up to Maine, the Maine coast. I'll be up there tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. 2 weeks of pleasure. I talked to Jersey Ed today. I told him I was going to put together my Answering the Call podcast tonight. Pardon me. And so that's what I'm doing. I hope everybody's well. Please feel free to contact me if I can be of any help to you, anybody in your department. If you're a cop, if you're a firefighter, if you're an EMS worker, if you're a correctional officer, and if you're a veteran. I'm also an Army veteran, 3 years, United States Army Military Police Corps, 72 to 75. I can't say enough about our vets, our disabled vets. I donate money to disabled vets. I was on a board for a while called VAV, Veterans Assistant Veterans, but I'm just too busy. I can't be everywhere at once. So what I did was, instead of helping the VAV, which they do a lot of work for veterans, I started donating a percentage of the money I make in my business to certain organizations. And VAV is one of them, because, I'm sorry, the DAV is one of them, Disabled Veterans of America, because all these people that are buried around the world that have fought in world wars, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, and the war in the Mideast, Iraq, Afghanistan. So many people have died, and they're all young adults. It's horrific. I was just at a gravesite, 12 hours ago. I was at a gravesite early this morning of a young officer who died in Virginia. She was shot to death. She was a Navy vet. She's buried in the Lowell Cemetery. And I said a blessing, a little prayer. People give of themselves to their country, but you know what? The media doesn't give a shit. They could care less. They could care less. Unless it's a sensational incident where you're killed, then they will give you the fanfare. But let me tell you, without the veterans of this country, we wouldn't have the country we have. You can say what you want about America, but there's not a country that comes close to it. Nowhere. And if you think there is, you're either very ignorant, you're uneducated, or you never traveled. Go to Mexico, throw away your ID, try to get out. All right. Go to Germany, throw away your ID, try to leave. Go to Ireland, throw away your ID, try to leave. All right. You can come to America and you can get anything you want without an ID. It's insane. But anyway, I don't want to get off on that. More importantly, right now, I'm more concerned about police officers' wellness. Contact me anytime. Excuse me. And God bless each and every one of you. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
That concludes this episode of Answering the Call, the First Responders Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for supporting those on the path to recovery and keeping this valuable resource free for all our friends in recovery. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates, and enjoy free access to twice daily support meetings. Brought to you by Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery.